Pfeiffer.
Big pod today, Dan. Big pod. We're going to be talking to our friend Jason. A lot happening. We're going to be talking to our friend Jason Kander about the new season of Majority 54. That's exciting. We'll be talking to Inimai Chettiar of the Brennan Center for Justice about the prison reform bill in Congress right now. We're going to talk about a little bump in the road on the way to Trump's Nobel Peace Prize. We're going to talk about the President of the United States referring to some deported immigrants as animals. And there were also about 700 stories about the investigation of Donald Trump and his crime family yesterday, so we will try to sort through those. Dan, how are you today?
Also,
you have any updates for
great.
us?
Happy Muellerversary. Today is the 1-year anniversary of Bob Mueller coming on the scene.
Well, I was going to say, and in celebration of that anniversary, we have Bob Mueller right here in studio. No,
that's right.
Wouldn't that be exciting?
That's right.
He would tell.
Actually, I would like to have him on the show. I'd like him to focus on his job too, get this thing wrapped up. So, greetings from the Bay Area, where we spend our time waiting for babies to come. So there's that.
Any minute now.
Any minute could happen. I'm literally downstairs from where Hallie is, so at any minute I might have to run upstairs and head directly to the hospital. But we'll see if we get through the pod today.
That'll be great pod. So,
I will miss you guys in New York and Boston next week. I will be otherwise occupied, but I'll be glad I'm doing what I'm doing while I'm here. We had a big announcement on the book today. Book tour dates are out for the first set of cities. We're going to be in the Bay Area for a couple events, coming to LA to do an event with you, Lovett and Tommy, which will be wild. We got an event in DC with Alyssa, New York with Peter Hamby, Portland, Maine. We got a bunch of events. If you live in any of these coastal elite cities, please come check it out. Book is out June 19th. All proceeds from the portion of the proceeds from the presale go to Swing Left. So you're buying the book, you're helping me feel better about myself, but you're also helping a very important organization. So
buy the book,
people.
Do it.
Go buy the
book. Okay, let's get to the news. Dan, I regret to inform you that if Donald Trump, Dan, I regret to inform you that Donald Trump may not have a lock on the Nobel Peace Prize after all. On Tuesday night, North Korea issued a statement that said, quote, "If the U.S. is trying to drive us into a corner to force our unilateral nuclear abandonment, we will no longer be interested in such dialogue and cannot but reconsider our proceeding to the North Korea-United States summit." Surprise, surprise. It looks like tweeting crazy shit at a madman was not the magical solution to a challenge that has bedeviled presidents of both parties for decades. Dan, what have we learned here about diplomacy from the North Korea?
I think you did not read the David Brooks column that Donald Trump with a brand new unorthodox view of foreign policy, where maybe he just understood the mind of the quote thug better than anyone else, which was why he was able to grant the release of a handful of some Americans who were kidnapped during his presidency. If you put aside the fact that a dozen or so were released during Obama's presidency, and the whole thing is, I guess the thing I'd say here is everything is stupid. It's just the reaction to how everyone, this is a very serious foreign policy thing. It was always going to be solving this problem is going to be a long shot. I think a meeting would be a very good thing. I think it is great that these Americans were released. But the idea that this is now considered, this is on the Fox News running list of Trump's accomplishments, is nuclear diplomacy with North Korea for a meeting that has not yet happened. A group of members of Congress tried to nominate Trump for the Nobel Prize. Attendees at a Trump rally started chanting Nobel while he was speaking for a meeting that had not yet happened and had not delivered a single change of consequence in North Korean policy.
And then we already fast forwarded to a debate on the internet about why won't liberals give him credit for a North Korean diplomatic breakthrough. We already got to that debate. There hasn't been a fucking meeting yet, people.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, the David Brooks column is the perfect example of a never Trump, quote unquote, conservative Republican who needs to find a way to make himself fit into a Trumpist Republican Party. So this seems like the way to do it. So you rush off just because it's 800 words in the New York Times op-ed page does not mean it's not just as vacuous as a Twitter hot take from some anonymous Twitter user or with a red hat avatar. Like that, let's take a deep breath, slow down. Let's see what happens before we try. We're so desperate to give Trump credit for something because he's so bad at everything else. And we don't even wait to see if he deserves credit for that thing. Because almost always, if you rush to praise Trump for something, you are going to end up looking stupid moments later because it always ends that way. And this isn't even really about Trump. This is also just like, has everyone slept through complicated diplomacy for the last several decades? This was obviously going to have a lot of bumps in the road. So maybe just keep the Nobel on ice for a few minutes and see how this plays out.
Well, it's a couple things. It's, as you said, a consequence of the Washington media having a fetish with balance. Every day, it's like we must try to credit Trump with something because we've been so tough on him for everything else. Not to mention the fact that you've been tough on him because he's like a lying, crazy, insane president. So that's number one. It's this we must find something to praise Trump about. Every day we're looking for it. And then number two, it's a broader problem, which is, in this news environment, two main issues are we all have collective amnesia. We can never remember what happened yesterday. And so things just wash away in news cycles in a matter of minutes. And then the other problem we have is patience. Everything has to be solved immediately. And so the summit is announced. It seems like we could have some kind of potential breakthrough, and everyone rushes right to judgment about what happened. Here's the thing. After that statement, we don't know. The summit could still happen and Trump could still be successful. I'm not saying now that this statement means that it's all over because I want to wait and see what the fuck happens. All we know so far is that North Korea has not offered Trump anything different than previous North Korean regimes have offered previous U.S. presidents. The only thing new so far is that Trump has accepted the meeting with the leader of North Korea. So if that meeting does happen, let's see what happens. Let's see, Trump has been promising denuclearization, which we've thought from the beginning is not something that Kim Jong-un is going to want to do. Because why would he give up his nuclear weapons? Why would he give up all his nuclear weapons? So will there be some kind of progress or breakthrough that's somewhere in between him giving up all of his nuclear weapons and him doing nothing, the status quo? Possibly, but maybe we should all wait and see before we start writing our fucking takes. Yeah,
here's a good first take. This is a good first step. That's the way to approach the scheduling of the meeting. That's what it is.
Be patient.
It's not a Nobel-worthy achievement. It doesn't tell you really anything about Trump's foreign policy acumen or his ability as president. Well, you're right. It's about balance. It is because Trump should have gotten credit, and we gave it to him here, which should be notable because we don't do it very often, for getting a meeting on the books. And if the meeting goes well and we make progress, even if it is short of the ultimate goal, if we improve the situation in some way, shape, or form, whether it's inspectors or some changes to missile technology, whatever it is, we should give them credit for it. But let's just wait till something actually happens. The other thing that it was really revealing about this incident is that for as much as Trump and his minions claim to hate elites and the mainstream media and elite institutions, what they truly crave at the end of the day is elite approval. And because there is no more globalist, cuck, elitist approval than getting European leaders to vote for you to get the Nobel Prize. That is the ultimate.
Right.
When they want it so bad, that ultimately so much of what drives this movement is an insecurity about not getting elite approval. It's why Trump cares so much about what Maggie Haber and the New York Times say about him. It's why he wants the Nobel Prize. It will prove he will be accepted in a club that he feels he is not accepted in yet, despite being president of the United States.
That is exactly right. It's also why all these conservatives online are all angry that liberals are too mean to them, and because of that, they're fueling Trump and everything. It is. They are all desperate, as much as they like to shit on the elite media and elites. They are desperate for this approval. You're right. It's the basis for this whole movement. There's one other interesting dynamic at play here in North Korea, which is it seems like what set the North Koreans off with the statement was our new national security advisor, John Bolton, who proposed a, quote, Libya model for North Korea. Problem with that model is years after Libya's Muammar Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons, he was captured and killed. So it seems like we, from the beginning, we've known this, that when Bolton arrived on the scene, he's not a big fan of diplomacy. Do you think he's trying? Do you think he's? The other thing I should say is it was pretty great in the statement that the North Koreans released. They said of Bolton, "We do not hide a feeling of repugnance towards him." Same. Same. Is Bolton trying to sabotage the talks, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, who knows? Bolton is he has been a well-credentialed foreign policy troll for his entire career. He's not someone who builds things. He just writes about destroying them in the pages of the Wall Street Journal. And so I don't think he has any concept of anything other than how to be inflammatory in rhetoric. And so now he's in a position where he actually has to do something. And I mean, ultimately, this is what happens when a president has no coherent policy view on any issue other than immigration.
Right.
There's no Trump vision or Trump doctrine that he's trying to implement. It's just sort of what some guy who knows very little about foreign policy thinks based on what he saw on Fox and Friends in the morning. It's very hard to work for someone like that. So I think he probably has no idea what he's supposed to do, and no one in the administration does because Trump doesn't. So it all sort of flows from incoherence at the top.
All Trump knows is that he wants a deal, and now the world knows that Trump wants a deal, and Kim Jong-un knows that Trump wants a deal desperately, and that's going to play to the advantage of the North Koreans at the negotiating table. So, art of the deal, man. We shall see. We shall see. I want to talk about the president's comments on immigrants Wednesday. During a White House roundtable about California's refusal to force local police officers to become deportation agents, Trump referred to some immigrants who'd been deported as animals. Here's the full context of what was said. A sheriff from Fresno was complaining about ICE, and she said, quote, "There could be an MS-13 member I know about. If they don't reach a certain threshold, I cannot tell ICE about it." Trump responds, "We have people coming into the country or trying to come in, and we're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals." Dan, Trump people, conservatives, Republicans are all saying that Trump was referring specifically to MS-13 members, that he's called them that before, which is true. He has called them animals before. What do you think about this whole thing?
The problem is Trump has forfeited the benefit of the doubt on almost every issue, but particularly the issue of immigration. The Trumpists have been trying to argue for more than 2 years now about whether, trying to explain that when Trump said rapists, that he was not referring to immigrants and Mexicans more generally, which he obviously was.
Right.
This state, irregardless, which I know is not a word, I think, but regardless,
whatever it is right now.
Think about it is now. Trump is president. Stop me. But whether in this instance he was referring specifically to MS-13, I think is fairly irrelevant, because the idea of trying to scare white Americans by demonizing immigrants of all stripes and refusing to distinguish between the tiny percentage who are MS-13 members or criminals and the overwhelming majority who come here looking for a better life or who have been here for years and are part of a community. Trump has never drawn a distinction between the Dreamers and members of MS-13. And we know this because during the very brief shutdown, the exact thing he did was compare Democrats' efforts to help the Dreamers with Democrats letting members of MS-13 into this country. And so I don't really care about this specific instance. What is undeniably true is that this is Trump's message to America, and it is consistent with how he describes immigrants and has for his entire time on the national stage here.
Yeah, and it's not just Trump, it's the entire Republican campaign message. It's the central message for 2018, and we know that because it's been the message in just about every race in 2017. It's where they're putting all their money behind their ads, is to talk about MS-13. They're running on MS-13. That's their issue. They're trying to say that all undocumented immigrants are like MS-13. The conflation has been happening from the beginning. And also, like, whatever Trump said or meant, which I think is ambiguous at best, just look at the policy. It comes, this set of comments come a few days after the White House announced a new policy that attempts to dissuade immigrants from crossing the border by separating parents from their children once they arrive. And when the White House chief of staff was asked whether this policy was cruel and heartless, his response was, quote, "The children will be taken care of, put into foster care," or whatever. Dara Lind, who knows this issue better than anyone at Vox, points out that since Trump took office, ICE has arrested 45,436 immigrants without criminal records. That's double. That's up 40%. Up to 40% of the people ICE now deports don't have criminal records, and that is double what was happening during the Obama era. So just look at the actual policy, never mind what Trump's saying. He's trying to scare people about immigrants. He's trying to say that the people in this country are criminals when that's not what the statistics say. And they want to focus on MS-13. Yeah, of course we want MS-13 fucking gang members arrested and deported out of the country. Of course we want that. But that's not what they want. They're all saying, like, oh, Democrats are rushing to the defense of MS-13. That's what Democrats are doing right now by pointing out that Trump just started talking about people who are animals at a press conference as he was talking about immigrants and deportations. It's ridiculous.
Do you think this is a trollish question? But do you think we are once again walking into a trap here as Democrats?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask about this because it's not that we're walking into a trap necessarily. It's that we're going to have to deal with this over and over again from now until November. Trump said a couple of weeks ago, this sort of went under the radar, that he wants to shut the government down in September over his border wall if he doesn't get funding for the border wall. He is looking, and Republicans are looking for every opportunity they can find to bring up immigration and to conflate it with violence and gangs and MS-13 and all the rest. And so I don't think that Democrats can just avoid that because that's their game plan. That's their campaign, and they're going to try to keep it in the news, whether it's something like this or whether it's Trump threatening to shut down the government or whatever it is. They're going to try to do this from now until November. So the question for us is not should we respond or not. It's how we're going to respond, because I don't think we can ignore it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it is. We must call, like, if the President of the United States is advocating racist views from a table in the White House, then we have to say something. And it's not an option to not say something. The question is, where do you go after that to make sure that people have a reason to vote for Democrats beyond just the fact, and it is an important fact, but beyond just the fact that we are ready, willing, and able to call out racism, misogyny, xenophobia, white nationalism, and all the other dangerous ideologies that are emanating from the President of the United States. What is the next part?
Well, look, I also think we've got to let people know what exactly is happening besides just waving it off as racist, you know? Because we can say that, but like let's actually talk about what's going on here. I mean, the story from Slate this morning that broke around the same time as everyone's been talking about these comments. ICE recently arrested a dreamer, revoked his DACA status, placed him in detention, and attempted to deport him, claiming he was a gang member. And a federal judge just ruled that ICE was lying, that they lied about it, that they actually tried to get a false confession out of this young person who has been in this country since he was a child. He lived in Seattle. I showed up at his house to arrest his father, who wasn't here, was here as an undocumented immigrant, and then said to him, "We're going to arrest you too." And the kid says, "Well, no, here's my DACA work permit." I'm supposed to be here legally. It's fine. And they said, that doesn't matter. And they ripped up the work permit, and they threw him in jail, and they tried to get a false confession out of him. And a federal judge had to rule that he was lying, and they tried to deport this man. So, like, we don't actually have to be going back and forth as whether what Trump said or meant was racist or not. These are the policies that are being carried out in this country right now by ICE. And I don't think that most people in this country think it's okay to go up to an undocumented immigrant who has a DACA work permit, who said he's here legally, who said he can work here legally, and try to lie and arrest that person and deport that person. I don't think people like that. I don't think that's a good platform for Republicans to run on either. You know, they only win if it's this conflated debate where, you know, we say, oh, Trump's racist, and they say, oh, Democrats love MS-13. And even then, that didn't work for them too well in the 2017 special elections. Otherwise, we'd be talking about Governor Gillespie right now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the key for... move to the crimes.
Okay, let's get to the crimes. All right, Dan, let's talk about the Trump investigation. I decided I'm going to start calling it the Trump investigation now because I don't know why we call it the Mueller investigation or the Russia investigation, because I started thinking to myself, if Hillary Clinton were president, they'd be calling it the Clinton investigation. Because right now it's like a major corruption investigation into Trump and multiple associates that had like senior level jobs on the campaign in the White House. So that's what it is to me.
That's right.
Anyway, about 765 stories broke yesterday. It was really tough. Poor Michael was trying to do this outline, do some research, and it was just story after story about Russia. We'll go through all the highlights, but here's how you know it wasn't a great day for Trump. The day ended with his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, celebrating his belief that Mueller won't indict the president. He might only refer him to Congress for impeachment. And Rudy then argued to Laura Ingraham that there's actually nothing at all legal about asking a foreign power to undermine a U.S. election on behalf of your own campaign. We finally got to, you know what? Collusion, not really a crime. What do you think of that? What do you think of the new talking point?
Well, it was inevitable we were going to get here.
Right.
It was inevitable because we know collusion happened. This is not. I don't know. Maybe everyone in politics like watching Matlock too much and is like waiting for the smoking gun to happen. All the evidence is before our eyes. It is right there. It was in the documents released by the Senate Intelligence Committee yesterday.
Yeah. So the Senate. So the Senate Intel Committee basically they issued a bipartisan statement. That their investigation has concluded that Russia interfered in 2016 with the purpose of helping Donald Trump. No shit. Every single intelligence agency and law enforcement agency in the United States government and in other governments have all come to this conclusion. As usual, the only people who disagree are House Republicans, Fox News, and Donald Trump. So that's the Senate Intel Committee. And then the Senate Judiciary Committee released a bunch of Russia documents and the transcript of the interview with Don fucking Jr., man. Who apparently started the infamous Trump Tower meeting by asking the Russians, "So, I believe you have some information for us."
Yeah. I mean, so like just take a step back and like get away from the like this narrow question that apparently like the political world wants to hear, which is like some sort of direct communication from Trump to Putin handshake deal.
Right. Let us collude. Now we will collude together.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. We will agree to accept your emails, and once we accept them, we will undo the sanctions. Congratulations. Thank you.
Doesn't even make sense.
Please send your one copy of the P-tape directly to Trump Tower. That's not the thing. So let's think about, just look at the evidence, right? So you have Trump, a agent of the Russian government, promising dirt on Trump's political opponent, meets with Trump's son-in-law, campaign manager. Trump hires, randomly, out of nowhere, a campaign manager who's been out of politics for decades, who happens to be very closely associated with pro-Putin oligarchs and deeply in debt to them. Months later, the Republican Party, out of nowhere, changes its platform to be shockingly pro-Putin. Then you have after the election, Trump's son-in-law, agreeing to try to set up a back channel with the Russians outside of the eyes and ears of law enforcement, of U.S. law enforcement, and U.S. intelligence agencies. And you have not one, but two Trump advisors who reportedly had knowledge of Russian hacking of DNC and Podesta emails prior to the rest of the world knowing. All of these things added together make it so clear that collusion happened. Like that is just a fact, and we have to accept that. So now the question is, what happens? What are the consequences for said collusion, politically and legally? But it happened. It just absolutely happened. And maybe it's a crime. Maybe it's not a crime. Maybe it's a crime that the question, I guess, is ultimately not that it happened, is twofold. One, can Trump face legal or political consequences through it from either Mueller, a court of law, or impeachment? And does Mueller have the evidence to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that various Trump associates who have already been indicted or could soon be indicted are guilty of those crimes? But let's just be clear about the obvious facts about what happened in this election and Trump's willingness to accept help from a foreign power promising pilfered illegally acquired emails from Trump's political opponent.
Yeah, I mean, look, just the fact that the Trump campaign wanted the dirt from a foreign power on their political opponent, knew that it existed, and decided not to go to the FBI or tell the FBI about it, could possibly consist as a crime all on its own. I mean, this is why, we've talked about this before, there is a spine of all the indictments that Mueller is bringing to bear here, that they're all conspiracy to defraud the United States, whether it's Paul Manafort or the Russian troll farm or whatever else. And conspiracy to defraud goes to like knowingly concealing from the federal government information that could allow the government to function properly, which is to make sure that, you know, in the case of the Federal Election Committee, there aren't illegal campaign finance contributions or campaign finance contributions that are coming from foreign governments, or that emails have been hacked, which is also against the law. So there's plenty. Clearly, these people were in on it. They all knew. They knew that emails were being illegally hacked and that they were going to be dumped by a foreign power in order to help their opponent. And they asked for it. They wanted it. And then they lied about it when they were asked. That's why a whole bunch of them have pled guilty and have been indicted, because they kept lying to federal officials every time federal officials have said, why did you have all these contacts with Russians? Well, if they weren't guilty, why would they continue to lie about all the contacts with Russians? Come on.
Yes. I mean,
it's not that hard.
Yeah, Donald Trump's son, in coordination with Donald Trump and senior White House aides like Hope Hicks, lied not once, not twice, but 3 times to the press and the public about the nature of that meeting. You don't do that if that is something that you do not believe to be a crime when you do it. I mean, also, let's just focus 1 minute on, it's not just the criminality, it's the stupidity, knowing that there are all these emails flying around that have probably been turned over to Congress already. It is crazy. But it is worth noting, this gets glossed over a lot, but it is insane that they did not, if they are innocent, it's insane that they did not call the FBI after Russian government emissaries showed up with promising dirt on Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's crazy. So
it's insane. It's insane, but also, like, let's remember what Trump said right before the Democratic National Convention to a whole bunch of reporters when he said, Russia, if you have the 30,000 emails that are missing from Hillary Clinton, please find them and give them to our press. I mean, like, people have made this point a million times, but like, this is why it's not super surprising to anyone, and everyone thinks they're like waiting. The scandal's in plain sight. The crime was in plain sight, and the timing of when he said that fits into the broader timeline of when they committed all these crimes.
So 2 things on this. One, you're still right here, which is like, we're not even focused on the trees. We are focused on like parts of the leaves of this. When you step back, we are living in a forest of crime and collusion. Like that, it's so obviously that. the second thing is, and I'm going to date myself here, but when I was much younger, and working on the Gore campaign in 2000, one day as we were preparing for the debates, one of our advisors gets a package in the mail. And in that package, it opens it up, and it is George W. Bush's briefing book for the debate, with all of the suggested questions, all the answers, all the guidance. No idea where it comes from, no idea how it got there. And so the question is, what do you do with it? And it really wasn't a question, because no one was like, well, let's read it and see what happens. The first thing the person who received the book did was call the campaign attorney, who immediately called the FBI, who came to get it and open a criminal investigation to find out how proprietary information had gotten from the Bush campaign to the Gore campaign. And so if that was what you would do on a debate prep book from one campaign to the other, the idea that you would not call the FBI and not alert law enforcement when a foreign government, and this is not Great Britain or Australia, this is a country in which we are in a particularly tense relationship and in a global standoff over Ukraine and other issues at the time, is just crazy. And or maybe it's a completely sane reaction if you are trying to engage with them in a criminal conspiracy to help win an election.
I choose that one.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just when you're dealing with simple people, the simplest explanation is probably right.
I choose that explanation. So the third big thing yesterday, I guess that's number 3, was all the Michael Cohen news. A financial disclosure released by President Trump on Wednesday revealed that he paid a debt of more than $100,000 to Michael Cohen, the fixer who paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 of hush money to keep her quiet about an alleged affair she had with Donald Trump. So this is now the proof that Donald Trump lied to us and has been lying to us for a long time. But there was more on this. The Office of Government Ethics, when they saw that disclosure, has now basically referred the disclosure, the financial closure, to the Justice Department for criminal investigation because Trump previously filed false financial reports that concealed this debt. So that's something. Now we have an Office of Government Ethics referral to the Justice Department about the president lying on his financial disclosure because he tried to conceal this payment. I read that and I was like, this would be like the biggest story in the world 2 years ago with any other president.
Is it even on the front page of a single paper in America?
I don't think it is. I saw it from some tweets. Walter Schaub, the former head of the government's ethics office, was tweeting about it because he used to run the ethics office, and he thought it was quite weird when he got a financial disclosure last year that didn't have the debt on it.
It is. Sometimes you just have to step back and explain what is actually happening outside of the context. It's almost worth anonymizing the information,
right?
So it's not Trump specific, but it's the President of the United States had his fixer set up a secret shell corporation to funnel money to pay off a woman he had an affair with. Then lied about it on his federal financial disclosure form until he was forced to reveal it this year. And in reaction to that, the Office of Government Ethics referred the President of the United States to the Justice Department for potential criminal prosecution. That. Don't say the words porn star or Stormy Daniels or Michael Cohen or Donald Trump. Just that. Any president, and the next day, any person other than Trump, the next day story is this the end of the presidency? Embroiled in massive scandal. And we barely put our phones down to focus on this because so much else is happening. And this is maybe the trap of the entire Russia thing is there may be a bunch of really hard to prove crimes that we're spending all of our energy on, and then there are these very obvious crimes happening before our eyes. And maybe crimes is the wrong word, because the end result, we have to have a higher standard for our president than is there misconduct prosecutable by a criminal court or Congress. It should also be, did our president engage in misconduct? And that should be enough to get the body politic to react in ways that affect that president's ability to enact their agenda. And so we've so demeaned what we expect from our president because our president is terrible. And that could have consequences that extend long past the time that Donald Trump leaves the White House on flying off on Marine One back to Trump Tower, or in the back of an FBI van.
Well, one of the reasons that we sort of blew by that story yesterday is because there's more news about the Michael Cohen shell company, which now just looks like a bribery racket. Cohen was paid by a state-owned Korean defense company lobbying for a U.S. government contract, and they said the payment to Cohen was, quote, for government accounting procedures, because he's such a stickler for government accounting procedures, that Michael Cohen. Cohen apparently also asked the government of Qatar for $1 million in exchange for access to Trump. That was another story yesterday. And then we ended the day, thanks to reporting from Ronan Farrow of The New Yorker, about how Cohen's financial records were leaked in the first place. Apparently, a law enforcement official had grown alarmed after not being able to find 2 additional suspicious activity reports on Cohen's financial activity in a secret government database. So these reports on suspicious activity, which are generated by a bank because they believe that someone may have committed fraud, that there was money laundering, that there was wire fraud or bank fraud. And so when that happens, they issue a suspicious activity report, and it goes to the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department conceals these reports. They keep them very secret so as not to expose who it's about and not to disrupt any potential investigation. And yet there's a database that a lot of people who work at Treasury can find these suspicious activities reports. Well, 2 of the reports on Michael Cohen that total somewhere around $3 million are missing from the system. And we don't know why they're missing from the system, Dan. Either the records were destroyed, which, as some people pointed out, is sort of weird because the banks are going to have copies of the records anyway, or they were so bad that Mueller got in there, or someone from the Southern District of New York, and decided to conceal them to make sure no one could find them because it would potentially disrupt his investigation. So that sounds bad.
Yeah, it's incredibly alarming, and we don't have to leap immediately to the idea that someone has destroyed the records. There could be an explanation here.
Yeah, Mueller could have concealed them.
Yeah, Mueller could have them, but I would say that it is not also determinative that whatever moron decided they were going to try to obstruct justice was smart enough to know the banks would also have the record. Completely ham-handed obstruction of justice is really on brand.
It would be very on brand. Very on brand.
So, but it is like you tweeted, I hope Mueller has these, and if he doesn't have them, I think he's going to have them pretty soon because the banks would save them.
Right.
But the fact that Mueller might have them may explain why we're, thanks to this whistleblower and the media outlets and Michael Avenatti and others who have revealed them, we know about these, like the potential Michael Cohen bribery scam. But Mueller has interviewed these companies last year, and so he may have looked at that. He may even have seen these before, if they were destroyed before they were destroyed. But once again, you have an incredibly alarming piece of information that has been revealed to us that we are simply going to gloss over while we debate other things. And that speaks to the larger challenge of not just the Democratic Party to focus the public on winning the next election, just on our ability as a nation and a political system to be able to have any sort of accountability for misconduct and misdeeds from our political leaders.
Yeah, well, it's a good segue to what I want to talk about next. So there's a great piece in New York Magazine Wednesday by Eric Levitz that argues that, Democratic politicians are doing a pretty decent job talking about the things voters really care about, like their access to health care, et cetera, et cetera. But media outlets, and even, media outlets like CNN and even liberal-leaning media outlets like MSNBC are obsessed with covering the Russia story because it's good for ratings. I'm just going to read a part of this piece. He says, it's not MSNBC's job to promote the Democratic Party's economic message, and the Mueller investigation is an important and fascinating story that's tailor-made for television news. It would not be realistic for Democrats to expect any for-profit media company to prioritize conveying its preferred political narratives over conveying the most sensational events of the day. And yet Republicans do get that courtesy from the nation's most watched cable news channel. Fox News puts the GOP's messaging needs ahead of maximizing eyeballs. That is very true, I think. And then the question for us is, what do Democrats do about it? We've talked about this a lot on this podcast. Like, how do Democrats break through the noise when they don't have a media outlet like Fox that is just trying to elect Democrats? And look, I'll start by saying we are a media outlet, a half media, half political outlet that is trying to elect Democrats. And we talk about the Russia story quite a bit here, but I don't do it because I think it's good politics for Democrats. I do it because it is a fucking important story, and I want to know the truth about what's happening. The President of the United States is hugely corrupt, and he's lied to us. And 4 of his top campaign officials and White House officials have pled guilty already, and many more have been indicted. And that's a big fucking problem, and I think people should know about that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's a couple things here. And as you know, this is a focus of great fascination and obsession of mine. And I spend some time in the book on Fox News and its horrendous impact on America and politics. But there's a couple of elements here. But one, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, Pod Save America, everyone else is not wrong as a media entity to focus on the Russia election. And it's not just that it's good for ratings. It is helpful that it's good for ratings. Of course, it is a for-profit. These are for-profit entities. But it's also potentially the greatest political scandal in modern American history.
Yeah.
So it's sort of crazy not to focus on it, right? And it'd be insane not to. Like, all of these stories that we mentioned are gigantic, huge, world-changing stories. They're just all happening at the same fucking time.
Right.
So that's one. Two, nothing makes me more exhausted than when we talk about Fox News and then the press, then either conservative media, Republicans come back and say, what about CNN and MSNBC? Now, the CNN part has to do with Trump deciding that he's mad at Jeff Zucker for not doing propaganda for him. CNN doesn't have opinion shows like MSNBC. And so that is part of, you can insert the New York Times, Washington Post, that is part of the general critique from Trump and the right, bad faith critique, to try to say that the media is all liberal, right? And so put that aside. That is such a simplistic view of a complicated situation, and it's absurd. But then, so MSNBC, which has Rachel Maddow, Chris Hayes, and everyone else, Joy-Ann Reid, everyone else. And so the argument is MSNBC is the Democrats' Fox. There is nothing true about that statement other than the fact that in prime time, MSNBC air shows with liberal opinion hosts, and at that same time, Fox air shows with conservative opinion hosts. Although he has not been a supporter of Trump, the host of the morning show on MSNBC is a former Republican congressman. Could you imagine a world where it's like Fox in the morning was like ramen friends? Like, no, it's insane. It's like there's a Republican congressman who at one point was so close to Trump that Trump offered to officiate his wedding at the White House.
They gave Hugh Hewitt a show. Hugh fucking Hewitt has a show on MSNBC on the weekends. Come on, man.
Yes. In the middle of the day, they have shows hosted by objective journalists from NBC broadcast. Chuck Todd, Andrea Mitchell, Katie Tur, Hallie Jackson. The same thing does not happen at Fox. Fox is a propaganda network designed to push forward Republican political power, not Republican policies. The policies don't really matter that much to them. It is Republican political power. And the reason you know that the policies don't matter to them is Rupert Murdoch is a longtime supporter of comprehensive immigration reform, and every night his network airs 3 to 4 hours of racist propaganda against immigrants. And during the day, the quote-unquote news elements do stories that are designed to fit into a narrative that the network is pushing. For the time Barack Obama was president, it was an anti-Obama narrative. This narrative that Obama was an out-of-touch, effete, big city liberal who, frankly, did not have the interest of, quote-unquote, regular white Americans at heart. That's what it was. That is not what happens on MSNBC.
No.
And we, as Democrats, are at a massive disadvantage because the Republicans have built over the course of the 8 years of the Obama presidency and the first year and a half of the Trump presidency, a massive propaganda network of which Fox is the most prominent, but an entire array of websites and newspapers, Breitbart, the Free Beacon, LifeZ, Gateway Pundit, all of these things that are pushing pro-Trump content and anti-democratic content into the social media, and particularly Facebook ecosystem, and shaping the context of the national conversation around politics in ways Democrats certainly, frankly, cannot compete.
Yeah, I mean, you said it before, but the big distinction for me is it's not conservative propaganda, it's Republican propaganda, and there is a difference. Their purpose is to get Republicans elected and to keep Republicans in power. Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow are liberals, but their purpose is not to elect Democrats. Their purpose is to be liberal opinion journalists, and they do that quite well. But so that's going to take them in directions that are not necessarily helpful to the Democratic Party all the time, and that's fine. That's good. I mean, that's their thing. But that's on the right. There's something entirely different. It's an entire propaganda network just solely dedicated to keeping Republicans in power. That's what it is, and we don't have anything like that. Except we're trying to do it here, but that's about it.
Yeah, a couple things about that. One, that this media infrastructure advantage of the Republicans, more than anything else, with a possible exception of Russian interference, scares me more about the 2020 election. It is a very serious problem, and we do not yet have an answer. I mean, what you guys are doing for media and what in Pod Save America is one answer to that, but you're going to need a lot.
Still a small one. More. Yeah, you need a lot more.
And two, the answer for Democrats can't be we need Democratic propaganda.
No,
that will not work. If you look,
even if we wanted to do that, even if we decided to throw our morals away and go down that road, that's not how our base responds. We don't respond well to like lying and fear mongering and all that bullshit that they do. We just don't. We need more, inspiration, and we need more and more truth. That's just the way our base works.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so we need to find ways to help control and shape the political conversation in this country and allow it to focus on the issues we care about. But we can't do it. We will not have success trying to rerun the Trump-Fox playbook. And how we solve that problem over the next few years is going to be massively consequential to the short and long-term future of this country. Not to not do over dramatic, but yeah, it's dramatic.
Well, one person we're going to talk to about that next is our friend Jason Kander, host of Majority 54. So we'll be talking to Jason right after the break.